A 16-year-old girl stands alone at the edge of a reservation, her trembling hands cradling the small swell of her belly beneath a threadbare jacket. Behind her lies the wreckage of her former life, a family that turned their backs, a community that whispered cruel judgments, and a future that crumbled before it could begin. Before her stretches the unknown territory of the Apache reservation, where an aging chief has offered what no one else would: acceptance without condition, belonging without shame. But sometimes the most devastating rejection can lead to the most unexpected kinship. And sometimes what appears to be the end of everything becomes the beginning of a family that transcends blood, honors courage, and redefines the very meaning of belonging. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Emma Mitchell pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the Greyhound bus window, watching the Arizona landscape transform from suburban sprawl to expanses of red earth dotted with sagebrush and distant mesas. The December air seeped through the cracks around the window frame, but Emma barely noticed the chill. The cold she felt came from somewhere deeper, a frigid emptiness that had taken root the moment her father's voice had thundered through their Phoenix home. "No daughter of mine gets herself pregnant at 16. You've brought nothing but shame to this family." His words still echoed in her mind, almost as loudly as the slamming door that followed her mother's tearful agreement that Emma should leave. 3 months pregnant, with nowhere to go and barely $200 in her pocket, money her grandmother had secretly pressed into her palm before Emma was forced to pack a single duffel bag and walk away from everything she'd ever known. The bus hit a pothole, jarring Emma from her memories and causing her hand to instinctively move to the small bump beneath her worn Arizona State University sweatshirt, a hand-me-down from the older brother who hadn't bothered to stand up for her. The baby. Her baby. The reality of her situation crashed over her again with paralyzing force. She was 16, homeless, pregnant, and headed for the White Mountain Apache Reservation, based on nothing more than a newspaper article she'd read about Chief Thomas Benally and his program to help troubled youth find their way. The article had described how the 72-year-old tribal elder had transformed parts of the reservation into a place of healing for young people struggling with addiction, homelessness, and abuse. "We do not turn away those who need shelter," he had been quoted saying. "The Apache way is to recognize the warrior spirit in those fighting their hardest battles." Emma had no connection to the Apache people. Her heritage was a mix of Irish and Italian from her father's side and Mexican from her mother's, a combination that had given her dark hair, olive skin, and a father who ironically prided himself on being a self-made American while disparaging immigrants who arrived after his grandparents. But something about Chief Benally's words had kindled a tiny flame of hope in her darkest moment. The bus rolled to a stop in the small town of White River, the tribal headquarters of the White Mountain Apache. Emma was the only passenger to disembark, stepping down to a dusty road lined with modest buildings, a trading post, and a small diner. The December air was sharp with cold, the altitude making the winter sun seem both brighter and more distant. Emma pulled her thin jacket tighter and shouldered her duffel bag, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of what she was doing. What if the chief turned her away? What if the program was only for Apache youth? What if there was no room? Or they took one look at her pregnant belly and decided she was too much trouble? The what-ifs spiraled until Emma found herself frozen in place, the bus pulling away behind her, leaving her alone in a place where she knew no one, and no one knew her. "You look lost, young lady." The voice startled Emma from her panic. She turned to find a woman in her 50s watching her with kind eyes, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a practical braid. She wore a denim jacket over a simple dress, turquoise jewelry at her throat and ears. "I'm looking for Chief Thomas Benally," Emma managed to say, her voice smaller than she'd intended. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "Thomas? What business do you have with the chief?" Emma's throat tightened. How could she explain that she was here because of a newspaper article in desperate hope? "I read about his program for troubled youth," she said finally. I need help." The woman's gaze shifted briefly to Emma's midsection, where her protective hand still rested. Instead of judgment, her expression softened. "I'm Mary Benally," she said. "Thomas is my father-in-law. Come with me." I was heading to the family compound anyway." Relief weakened Emma's knees, but she forced herself to follow as Mary led her to an aged blue pickup truck parked nearby. As they drove through the reservation, Mary asked no invasive questions, instead pointing out landmarks, the tribal offices, the school, the health center, speaking with obvious pride about recent improvements. "The reservation faces many challenges," Mary explained as they turned onto a dirt road that led away from the town center. "Unemployment, health issues, the legacy of historical trauma. But we are a resilient people. We survive. We adapt. We hold to what matters." The road wound through pine-covered hills until they reached a collection of buildings nestled in a sheltered valley. The main house was a substantial log structure with a covered porch, surrounded by several smaller cabins and traditional wickiups. Smoke rose from chimneys and cooking fires, and Emma could see people moving purposefully around the compound, some clearly Native American, others surprisingly diverse. "This is Benally family land," Mary explained, parking the truck. "Thomas started bringing troubled young people here 20 years ago after his wife passed. Said their home was too empty with just his grief for company." Emma stepped out of the truck, clutching her duffel bag like a shield. The altitude made her slightly lightheaded. Or perhaps it was the fear that her last hope might dissolve before her eyes. "Wait here," Mary said, gesturing to a bench on the porch. "I'll find Thomas." Left alone, Emma watched the activity around the compound. A group of teenagers was splitting wood near one of the outbuildings, their laughter carrying on the crisp air. Two young women about her age were hanging laundry on a line strung between pines, while an older man taught what appeared to be a carving technique to several attentive children. There was purpose here, and a sense of community that made her chest ache with longing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "So you are the girl who has traveled so far to find us." The voice was deep and measured, each word given weight and consideration. Emma turned to find an elderly man standing beside the bench, his presence so quiet she hadn't heard him approach. Chief Thomas Benally was tall and straight-backed despite his age, with deeply lined features that spoke of both hardship and laughter. His gray hair was pulled back in a traditional style, and he wore a simple flannel shirt with jeans, a turquoise bolo tie at his throat. Emma stood hastily, nearly losing her balance. The chief steadied her with a strong hand, then gestured for her to sit again, joining her on the bench. "Mary says you read about our program," he said, his dark eyes studying her with unsettling perception. "But there are many programs closer to Phoenix. Why come all the way to the reservation?" The question pierced through Emma's carefully constructed explanations. Why had she come here specifically? To this remote place where she knew no one and shared no cultural connection? "Because," her voice caught, and she forced herself to continue. "Because you said you don't turn away people who need shelter. And the article said you believe in seeing the warrior spirit in people fighting their hardest battles." Tears threatened, but Emma blinked them back fiercely. Everyone else only saw my mistake. My shame. The chief was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to the hand that had instinctively returned to protect her unborn child. "What is your name, young one?" "Emma Mitchell." "Emma." He pronounced it carefully as if testing the weight of her name. "And how old is the child you carry?" 3 months, she whispered. "Not the pregnancy," he corrected gently. "The child. You." The question caught her off guard. 16, she admitted, then added quickly, "But I'll be 17 in February." Chief Benally nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "And the father of your baby?" Emma looked down at her worn sneakers. "He was my boyfriend. When I told him about the baby, he blocked my number. His parents sent him to live with an uncle in California. Quote, and your family?" The wound was still raw, bleeding pain with each heartbeat. "My father said no daughter of his would bring such shame to the family. My mother agreed with him. They gave me 3 days to leave." She expected questions about why she hadn't sought help from social services, or why she hadn't considered adoption or abortion. Instead, the chief asked something that no one else had bothered to ask. "And what do you want, Emma Mitchell?" The question was so unexpected that Emma found herself answering with complete honesty. I want to keep my baby. I want to finish school. I want... Her voice faltered, then strengthened. I want to prove that they're wrong about me. That one mistake doesn't define my whole life or make me worthless. Something flickered in the chief's eyes. Approval, perhaps, or recognition. Those are the words of someone with a warrior's heart, he said. Not everyone would see it that way. My father called me a slut, Emma said, the word bitter on her tongue. My mother said I'd ruined my life and embarrassed the family. The counselor at school talked about my situation like it was a disease. No one asked what I wanted. Chief Benoli's weathered face remained composed, but his eyes flashed with an emotion Emma couldn't quite identify. The Apache have a saying, he told her. We believe that children are the heart of the people. When harm comes to a child, born or unborn, it harms the whole tribe. But we also believe that how we treat those who have stumbled shows the true strength of our community. He gestured toward the busy compound. Everyone you see here has their own story of hardship. Some struggled with alcohol or drugs. Others experienced abuse or homelessness. Some are Apache. Others come from different backgrounds. What matters is not where they came from, but their commitment to building a better path forward. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she was certain the chief could hear it. Are you saying I can stay? I am saying that you may have a place here if you are willing to work hard and respect our ways. His expression grew more serious. This is not a charity, Emma Mitchell. Everyone here contributes according to their abilities. Everyone follows the rules we have established. There is structure, accountability, and consequence. I understand, Emma said quickly. I'll do whatever work you need. I can cook and clean. I'm good with computers. I was on the honor roll before everything happened. The faintest smile touched the chief's lips. Mary mentioned you have a duffel bag. Is that all you brought with you? Emma nodded, embarrassment heating her cheeks. My father didn't give me much time to pack. Chief Benoli stood, his movement deliberate but not stiff. For a man in his 70s, he carried himself with remarkable vitality. Come, he said. I will show you where you will stay and then introduce you to those you will be living with. Tomorrow, we will discuss your education and responsibilities. Emma followed him across the compound, acutely aware of curious glances from others as they passed. The chief led her to one of the smaller cabins, opening the door to reveal a simple but clean interior, with 4 twin beds, each in its own corner with a small dresser beside it. 2 of the beds showed signs of occupancy, with personal items and carefully made blankets. You will share this cabin with 3 other young women, the chief explained. Sarah is 19, Gabriella is 17, and Kim is 16 like you. All came here under different circumstances, but all are working toward their high school diplomas while learning traditional skills and contributing to our community. He showed her to the unoccupied bed in the far corner. This will be your space. Keep it neat, respect the privacy of others, and they will do the same for you. Emma set her duffel bag on the bed, a lump forming in her throat at this simple kindness. A safe place to sleep, a corner to call her own when everything else had been taken from her. Thank you, she managed to say. Do not thank me yet, the chief replied, though his tone was kind. The path ahead will not be easy. Pregnancy and motherhood are challenging even with family support. You will be balancing schoolwork, community responsibilities, and preparing for your child. There will be days when you question your decision to come here. It's still more than anyone else offered, Emma said quietly. Chief Benoli studied her for a moment. There is an Apache belief that children choose their parents before they are born. If that is true, then your child has chosen a mother with courage. Remember that on the difficult days ahead. Before Emma could respond, the cabin door opened and 2 girls entered. One clearly Native American with glossy black hair cut in a modern bob, the other with light brown skin and curly hair that suggested mixed heritage. Both stopped short at the sight of the chief and a stranger in their cabin. Sarah, Gabriella, Chief Benoli greeted them. This is Emma Mitchell. She will be joining our community and sharing your cabin. I trust you will help her learn our ways." The girls exchanged a glance that Emma couldn't interpret before the one with the bob stepped forward. "Welcome," she said, her voice neither warm nor cold, simply matter-of-fact. "I'm Sarah. That's Gabriella." "Emma will need appropriate clothing for winter at this elevation," the chief told them. "Perhaps you can help her visit the community storage after dinner to find what she needs." Both girls nodded respectfully, and Emma realized that despite their youth, they regarded the elderly man with genuine deference. There was no eye-rolling or subtle resistance, just acceptance of his authority. "Dinner is in 1 hour," Chief Benali told Emma. "The main house has a bell that rings 10 minutes before meals. Until then, settle in and rest. The altitude can be challenging for newcomers." With that, he left, leaving Emma alone with her new roommates. An awkward silence filled the cabin until Gabriella broke it with unexpected directness. "So what's your story?" she asked, sitting cross-legged on her bed. "Everyone here has one." Emma hesitated, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach again. Sarah noticed the gesture immediately. "You're pregnant," she stated. Not a question, but an observation. When Emma nodded, Sarah's expression softened slightly. "That's hard. How far along?" 3 months, Emma replied, surprised by the lack of judgment in their reactions. "Morning sickness?" Gabriella asked practically. "It's getting better," Emma admitted. "The bus ride was rough, though." Sarah nodded. "Diane in cabin 3 had her baby last year. She was sick the whole 9 months. Rachel in the main house is a midwife. She'll probably want to check you out tomorrow." The casual acceptance in their tone made something tight in Emma's chest begin to unwind. These girls weren't looking at her with disgust or pity. There was a wariness, perhaps, but it was the normal caution of people who had their own difficult pasts, not specific judgment of her situation. "Chief Benali said you could help me find winter clothes?" Emma ventured, gesturing to her thin jacket. "Phoenix doesn't exactly prepare you for mountain winters," Gabriella agreed. "The community store has donated clothes sorted by size. We can go after dinner. You'll need a proper coat, boots, thermals, basically everything." "I don't have much money," Emma admitted. Sarah shook her head. "You don't pay for basics here. Everyone contributes work hours to the community, and everyone's needs are met. Luxuries you have to earn through extra work credits, but necessities are provided." As the girls explained more about how the community functioned, Emma began to understand that the chief ran something far more complex than a simple youth program. This was a carefully structured community that combined Apache traditions with practical education and skill development. Everyone had responsibilities: kitchen duty, gardening, caring for livestock, maintenance, tutoring younger children. Those over 18 who had finished high school could either attend college with the tribe's support or work in various tribal enterprises, from the casino to craft cooperatives. "What about my baby?" Emma asked, the question that had been weighing heaviest on her mind. "Will I be able to stay after?" "There are several young mothers here," Sarah explained. "The community helps with childcare so mothers can finish school or work, but you're expected to be the primary caregiver, and there are parenting classes you'll have to take." "My cousin had a baby at 17, Gabriella added. "She lives in the family cabin near the main house now. The chief believes in keeping families together when possible." The dinner bell rang, interrupting their conversation. Emma followed her new roommates to the main house, where tables were set up in a large communal dining area. About 40 people of various ages gathered, from small children to elders, with teenagers and young adults making up the majority. Emma noticed that while many were clearly Apache, there were also African American, Hispanic, and white faces among them. The program was genuinely diverse. Chief Benali sat at the head of the central table. Before anyone began eating, he stood and spoke a few words in Apache, then translated for those who didn't understand the language. "We give thanks for this food, for the hands that prepared it, for the earth that provided it, and for the community that shares it. May it strengthen our bodies as our connections strengthen our spirits." The simple blessing moved Emma unexpectedly. In her family, religion had been more about appearances than genuine spirituality, with church attendance a social obligation rather than a meaningful practice. There was something authentic in the chief's words that resonated on a deeper level. Dinner was simple but plentiful. A hearty stew with fry bread, fresh salad, and fruit. Emma found herself seated between Gabriella and a quiet boy about 14, who introduced himself as Miguel. Throughout the meal, various people stopped by to introduce themselves or welcome her with simple nods. The atmosphere was neither overtly friendly nor unwelcoming. There was a sense that she would need to earn her place but would be given the opportunity to do so. After dinner, Sarah and Gabriella took Emma to the community store as promised. A large shed organized with impressive efficiency. Racks of donated clothing were sorted by size and type, while shelves held essentials from toiletries to school supplies. An older woman named Irene helped them find everything Emma would need. A proper winter coat, insulated boots, thermal underwear, sweaters, gloves, and a warm hat. Winter nights drop below freezing here, Irene explained, adding thick socks to the growing pile. Layering is essential. And you'll need room to grow, she added, selecting a coat slightly larger than Emma's current size, with a knowing glance at her midsection. By the time they returned to the cabin, Emma was exhausted, but equipped with the basics she would need. As she organized her new belongings in the small dresser beside her bed, the third roommate, Kim, arrived. A pale girl with dyed black hair and multiple ear piercings who regarded Emma with cautious curiosity. "New girl, huh?" she said, dropping onto her bed. "Where are you from?" "Phoenix," Emma replied. "Just got here today." Kim nodded, apparently accepting this minimal information. "Chief, give you the warrior speech yet?" Emma smiled slightly. "About seeing the warrior spirit in people fighting their hardest battles?" "Yeah. He means it, you know," Kim said, unlacing her boots. "Not just words. First week I was here, I tried to run away twice and stole prescription meds from the clinic. Most places would have kicked me out. The chief just said I was fighting the wrong battle, and that a true warrior chooses her fights wisely." There was grudging respect in her voice that told Emma more about Chief Benali's methods than any official program description could have. This was a man who met troubled youth where they were, who recognized the pain behind their actions without excusing the behavior itself. As darkness fell over the reservation and the cabin grew quiet, Emma lay in her narrow bed, one hand resting on her stomach, the other clutching the silver medallion the chief had pressed into her palm before she left the dining hall. "This is a White Mountain Apache blessing medallion," he had told her. "It represents protection for travelers and those beginning new journeys. Keep it close." The gesture had brought tears to her eyes that she'd managed to blink back until she was alone. Now, in the darkness, she let them fall silently, but they were not entirely tears of sadness. For the first time since seeing the positive pregnancy test 3 months ago, Emma felt something like hope stirring in her chest. She had found a place where her pregnancy wasn't viewed as an unforgivable sin or a problem to be solved, but simply as one part of who she was. A place where she might be able to keep her baby and still have a future. A place where an Apache chief had looked at a lost pregnant teenager and seen not shame or failure but a warrior facing her hardest battle. Emma closed her eyes, the medallion warm in her palm, and allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had found where she belonged. In the morning, Emma was awakened by Sarah gently shaking her shoulder. "Morning meeting in 20 minutes. She said. "Everyone has to attend unless they're sick." Emma dressed quickly in her new warm clothes, grateful for the layers as she stepped outside to find frost coating the ground and her breath visible in the early morning air. She followed her roommates to an open area near the main house, where logs had been arranged in a circle around a central fire pit. People were gathering, stamping their feet against the cold and clutching steaming mugs. Chief Benali stood by the unlit fire pit, watching as the community assembled. When everyone had arrived, he nodded to an older man who carefully lit the fire while the chief spoke in Apache, then English. "We begin each day by remembering who we are and what we stand for," he said, his deep voice carrying across the circle. "The fire reminds us that even in the coldest times, warmth and light are possible when we come together." He continued with what Emma would later learn was a daily ritual, reviewing community achievements from the previous day, addressing any conflicts or issues that had arisen, and setting intentions for the day ahead. Several announcements followed. A group would be traveling to the town of Show Low for supplies. The health clinic was offering flu shots. The community greenhouse needed volunteers to prepare for spring planting. Then, to Emma's surprise, the chief gestured for her to stand beside him. "Today we welcome Emma Mitchell to our community," he said, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "She has traveled far and faced great challenges to be here. She carries not only her own future, but that of a new life. In the Apache way, we recognize that the arrival of a child, even before birth, is a blessing that belongs not just to the mother, but to the entire community." Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks as all eyes turned to her, but there was no whispered judgment, no shocked glances at her stomach, only quiet attention as the chief continued. "Emma will learn our ways, contribute to our work, and continue her education. And when her child arrives, we will welcome that new life as we welcome all children, as a gift and responsibility for us all." He turned to Emma then, his dark eyes holding hers steadily. "Do you accept the support of this community, and do you commit to supporting it in return with your effort, respect, and goodwill?" The question was formal, ritual, and Emma understood instinctively that her answer mattered, not just as words but as a covenant with these people who were offering her what her own family had withheld. "I accept and I commit," she said, her voice clear despite the emotion tightening her throat. Chief Benali nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Then from this day forward, you belong with our tribe, not by blood, but by choice and commitment. The path of the warrior is never easy, but it is never walked alone." As the meeting concluded and people dispersed to their daily tasks, Emma was introduced to Rachel, the midwife Sarah had mentioned. A practical woman in her 40s with kind eyes and capable hands, she led Emma to the small health clinic for an initial assessment. "How has the pregnancy been so far?" Rachel asked as she checked Emma's blood pressure. "Scary," Emma admitted. "I didn't tell anyone until I was 6 weeks along. Then everything happened so fast. My boyfriend disappeared. My parents kicked me out. I was sleeping on a friend's couch until her parents found out and said I couldn't stay there either." Rachel's hands were gentle as she examined Emma's growing belly. "And prenatal care?" "I went to a free clinic twice," Emma said. "They did an ultrasound and blood work. Everything was normal, but they kept pushing me to consider my options. When I said I wanted to keep the baby, the doctor looked at me like I was crazy." "You're not crazy," Rachel said firmly. "Young, yes. Facing challenges, absolutely. But the desire to keep your child doesn't make you crazy." She made notes in a file. "We'll need to get your records from that clinic." The reservation hospital has an obstetrician who visits twice a month, and I work closely with her for prenatal care. Your first appointment with her will be next week." As the examination continued, Rachel explained more about what Emma could expect in the coming months, not just medically but practically. The tribe had programs for young mothers, from prenatal education to parenting classes. There was even a doula program where experienced mothers supported new ones through labor, and the first weeks postpartum. The Apache believe that how we welcome children into the world shapes their spirits, Rachel explained. A mother who feels supported and honored brings forth a child who begins life feeling valued and secure. After the clinic, Emma was introduced to David, the education coordinator, a soft-spoken man with wire-rimmed glasses who assessed her academic standing and developed a plan for her to continue her high school education. "You were taking advanced placement courses in Phoenix," he noted, reviewing the transcript Emma had thought to bring with her. "Impressive. We can arrange for you to continue with similar rigor through our distance learning program combined with direct instruction." By lunchtime, Emma's head was spinning with information, schedules, and new faces. She found herself sitting beside a girl about her age who introduced herself as Diane, the young mother Sarah had mentioned. "Sarah told me you're pregnant," Diane said without preamble, bouncing a chubby-cheeked baby on her knee. "This is Lily. She's 10 months now." Emma found herself smiling at the baby's wide eyes and drooling grin. "She's beautiful." "She's a handful," Diane said with a tired smile, "but worth it. The chief says she brings joy to the whole community, not just to me. That helps on the hard days." "Were you scared?" Emma asked quietly. "When you found out you were pregnant?" "Terrified," Diane admitted. "I was 15, my boyfriend was in jail, and my mom had her own addiction issues. I ended up in the system until I ran away and somehow found my way here." She adjusted the baby on her lap. "The chief says some people have to lose everything to find where they truly belong. I think he was right, at least for me. The afternoon brought Emma's first work assignment, helping in the community kitchen with dinner preparation. Under the supervision of an elder named Martha, she learned to make traditional Apache fry bread while listening to stories of how the reservation had changed over the decades. Thomas has always been a visionary, Martha told her, expertly flipping the bread in hot oil. Even as a young man, he saw that our people needed to preserve our traditions while adapting to the modern world. This program of his, bringing in troubled young people from all backgrounds, shocked many conservatives in the tribe at first. But he persisted, saying that generosity of spirit was an Apache value worth preserving above all. As Emma worked, she noticed the easy camaraderie among the kitchen staff, all ages working together without the strict hierarchy she was accustomed to. Younger children came in after school to help with simple tasks, teenagers chopped vegetables alongside elders, and everyone's contribution seemed equally valued. By evening, exhaustion had settled deep into Emma's bones, a combination of physical work, emotional overwhelm, and the altitude adjustment her body was still making. After dinner, she found a quiet corner of the main house where a small library had been established. Browsing the shelves, she was surprised to find everything from contemporary novels to traditional stories, academic textbooks to practical manuals on sustainable living. "Find something that speaks to you," a voice said behind her. Emma turned to find Chief Bentley watching her with those perceptive eyes. "I've always loved reading," she admitted. "It was my escape when things were difficult at home." The chief nodded. "Stories are powerful medicine. They help us understand ourselves and others." The Apache believe that sharing stories is how wisdom passes from one generation to the next. Emma's fingers trailed over the spines of the books. "My father used to read to me when I was little," she said, the memory rising unexpectedly, "before he got so busy with work, before I became a disappointment." Parents sometimes forget that their children are not extensions of themselves, but unique spirits with their own paths to walk, the chief said. "Your father's inability to see your warrior heart is his loss, not yours." The simple validation brought the sting of tears to Emma's eyes. "I keep thinking I should hate him," she whispered. "Him and my mom both. But mostly I just feel sad. Sad that they couldn't love me enough to stand by me when I made a mistake." "Hate and love are not opposites," Chief Bentley said. "They are both forms of attachment. The opposite of both is indifference." He selected a small book from the shelf and handed it to her. "This contains traditional Apache wisdom teachings about family, belonging, and finding one's way. Perhaps it will offer some perspective as you begin your journey here." Emma accepted the book, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Thank you for giving me a chance," she said, "for seeing something in me worth saving." The chief's weathered face creased in a rare smile. "I did not save you, Emma Mitchell. You saved yourself by finding the courage to seek a different path when the familiar one was closed to you. That is the first lesson of the warrior, recognizing when to forge a new trail rather than following a destructive one." As Emma made her way back to the cabin that night, the chief's words echoed in her mind. For months, she had seen herself as a victim of circumstances, abandoned by her boyfriend, rejected by her family, judged by her community. But perhaps there was another way to view her story. Perhaps in choosing to keep her baby and seek a place where both of them could thrive, she had shown more strength than those who had turned their backs on her. Under the vast Arizona sky, stars blazing with a clarity she had never seen in the city, Emma placed her hand over the small life growing within her and made a silent promise. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the spirit of a warrior. And perhaps here, among people who valued that spirit, she and her child would find not just shelter, but true belonging. A week had passed since Emma's arrival at the White Mountain Apache Reservation, and already the rhythm of community life was beginning to feel familiar. Each morning began with the circle gathering around the fire, followed by breakfast in the communal dining hall, then the day's assigned work and studies. The structure provided a stability Emma hadn't realized she'd been craving, a framework that held her days together when so much else in her life had fallen apart. On this particular morning, Emma sat cross-legged on the floor of the community center, attempting to master the art of Apache beadwork under the patient guidance of Elder Martha. The intricate patterns required a level of concentration that made it impossible to dwell on painful memories or anxieties about the future. "Your tension is too tight," Martha observed, examining the colorful bracelet taking shape in Emma's hands. "The beads need room to lie naturally. Like people, they cannot be forced into their proper place. They must be guided there with gentle hands." Emma loosened her grip on the thread, watching as the pattern immediately settled into a more harmonious arrangement. She was learning that many of Martha's instructions contained wisdom that extended beyond the task at hand. "Better," Martha nodded approvingly. "You have good hands for detail work. Perhaps we will teach you moccasin making next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The other young women in the beading circle, Sarah, Gabriella, and two girls from another cabin, worked on their own projects with varying degrees of skill. Over the past week, Emma had begun to learn their stories in bits and pieces. Sarah, the Apache girl with the modern bob, had been raised in foster care off-reservation until Chief Benelli had located her as part of his mission to reconnect scattered tribal children with their heritage. Gabriella had fled an abusive stepfather in Tucson and lived on the streets before finding her way to the reservation. Each girl carried her own wounds, her own battles, yet here they sat together, creating beauty from tiny glass beads and shared determination. "Emma," Chief Benelli's voice interrupted her thoughts as he appeared in the doorway. "Your medical records have arrived from Phoenix. Rachel would like to see you at the clinic." Emma carefully set aside her beadwork and followed the chief out into the crisp winter air. December on the reservation brought brilliant blue skies during the day, with temperatures that could drop below freezing at night. The contrast with Phoenix's mild winter was stark, but invigorating. "How are you adjusting to our community?" the chief asked as they walked together toward the small clinic building. "It's different," Emma admitted, "but in good ways mostly. There's purpose here. Everyone seems to have a place, a role." "That is the Apache way," Chief Benelli nodded. "The tribe survives when each person contributes their strengths. No one stands alone." They reached the clinic, where Rachel greeted them with her characteristic efficiency. The midwife led Emma to a private examination room while the chief waited outside. "Your records show you're in good health overall," Rachel said, reviewing the file. "But your iron levels were borderline low at your last visit. We'll need to adjust your diet to address that." She made notes in Emma's chart. "The obstetrician will be here next Tuesday. I've scheduled you for the first appointment at 9. Emma nodded, relieved that there were no complications. "I have been feeling better. The morning sickness is almost gone." "Good." Rachel's expression softened slightly. "We should be able to hear the heartbeat today. Would you like that?" Emma's own heart seemed to skip a beat at the question. She had seen her baby on an ultrasound screen at the Phoenix clinic, a tiny bean-shaped blur that hardly seemed real. But hearing the heartbeat, that was different somehow. More concrete. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd like that very much." Rachel prepared the Doppler device, applying gel to Emma's slightly rounded belly. For a moment there was nothing but static as Rachel moved the wand carefully across her abdomen. Then suddenly, there it was, a rapid, rhythmic whooshing that filled the small room. "Is that—" Emma breathed, unable to complete the question as emotion closed her throat. "That's your baby," Rachel confirmed, a smile warming her professional demeanor. "Strong and steady, just as it should be." Emma closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. Her baby, alive and growing inside her, despite all the chaos and rejection that had surrounded its conception. In that moment, the abstract concept of pregnancy transformed into something profoundly real, a separate being with its own heartbeat, depending entirely on her for survival. When Rachel finally turned off the Doppler, the absence of the sound left an ache in Emma's chest. "I'll make a recording next time," Rachel promised, seeing Emma's expression. Many mothers find it comforting to listen to between appointments. After the examination, Emma found Chief Benelli waiting patiently on the clinic porch, gazing out at the mountains that surrounded the reservation. Something in her face must have revealed the emotional impact of hearing her baby's heartbeat, because he studied her with those perceptive eyes before speaking. There is an Apache tradition, he said, that when a mother first feels her child move within her, she should find a quiet place in nature to sit and sing to the baby. The songs create the first bond between mother and child, and introduce the little one to the voices of the natural world, the wind, the birds, the rustling leaves. That will be their first teachers. The image brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. "That's beautiful," she said softly. "Life creates life," the chief replied simply. "Even in the hardest circumstances, this remains a miracle worthy of celebration." As they walked back toward the community center, Emma found herself wondering how different her pregnancy might have been if her family had viewed it through this lens. Not as a shameful mistake to be hidden or eliminated, but as a challenging yet miraculous continuation of life itself. "Chief Benelli," she ventured, "can I ask you something personal?" He inclined his head slightly, which Emma had learned was his way of granting permission. "Why do you do this? Take in strangers, troubled kids from outside the tribe? It can't be easy, and I imagine some people on the reservation must object." The chief walked several paces in silence, considering her question with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "When I was a young man," he finally said, "I left the reservation to attend university in California. I believed education would be the salvation of our people. While there, my wife and I had a daughter, our only child." Emma listened intently, sensing that she was being entrusted with something precious. "When our daughter was 16, your age, she became involved with drugs. The university environment was difficult for her. She felt caught between worlds, belonging fully to neither. By the time we recognized the severity of her addiction, it had already taken deep hold." His voice remained steady, but grief shadowed his eyes. "We lost her to an overdose 2 years later." "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered, understanding now the personal motivation behind his program. "Grief can destroy, or it can transform," Chief Benelli continued. "After my wife passed from cancer shortly after, I had a choice to make. I could allow sorrow to consume me, or I could create meaning from our loss. I chose to build this program, to offer troubled young people what my daughter needed but could not find: a place to belong, structure with compassion, tradition with adaptability." They had reached the community center, but paused outside, their conversation requiring conclusion before rejoining others. "Some on the reservation did object," the chief acknowledged. "They felt our resources should be reserved for Apache youth only. But I reminded them that our traditions teach generosity of spirit. The Apache have historically adopted children from other tribes, even from enemy peoples. Our strength as a community has always come from our willingness to incorporate those who commit to our ways, regardless of their origins." Emma thought about this as they entered the building, where the beating circle continued in comfortable silence. She could see now why the chief had been willing to accept a pregnant non-native teenager sight unseen. Her presence here was not just charity, it was the living embodiment of his response to personal tragedy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The days fell into a rhythm as December deepened. Each morning, Emma attended classes with the other high school students, working to maintain her academic standing despite the disruption to her education. Afternoons were divided between community work assignments and various programs designed to prepare her for motherhood. One particular afternoon found Emma in the community garden greenhouse with Diane and several other young mothers and mothers-to-be. Despite the winter chill outside, the greenhouse maintained a humid warmth that supported year-round growing. "The Apache have always understood the connection between the earth and women's bodies," explained Arlene, an elder who specialized in traditional plant medicine. "Both nurture new life, both follow cycles of fertility and rest, both require respect and care to remain healthy." As they worked with the rich soil, planting winter vegetables and tending existing crops, Arlene shared knowledge that had been passed down through generations of Apache women: which plants supported pregnancy, which eased childbirth, which helped with a newborn's colic or a mother's milk production. "Modern medicine has its place," Arlene acknowledged, "but there is wisdom in our traditional ways that should not be forgotten. The two can work together like your two hands working together in the soil." Emma found herself absorbing this knowledge eagerly, filing away information that connected her to a lineage of mothers stretching back through time. There was something profoundly comforting about being part of this continuity, even if she shared no blood connection to these women. After the gardening session, Emma had her first appointment with Lucinda, the community's family counselor. A soft-spoken woman with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, Lucinda created an atmosphere of safety in her small office filled with plants and native artwork. "Chief Benali has asked me to work with you on processing your family situation," Lucinda explained. "Pregnancy is challenging enough without the added burden of rejection from those who should support you." Emma tensed slightly. She had been so focused on practical matters, finding housing, continuing her education, preparing for the baby's arrival, that she'd managed to push the raw wound of her family's rejection to the back of her mind. "I'm doing okay," she said with forced lightness. "I'm keeping busy." Lucinda's gaze was gentle but penetrating. "Keeping busy is a valid coping mechanism," she acknowledged. "But unprocessed grief and anger have a way of emerging later, often at the most difficult moments. Becoming a mother will bring up many emotions about your own parents." The simple truth of this observation broke through Emma's carefully constructed defenses. "I keep having this dream," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I'm holding my baby, and my parents are there, and they're smiling and proud, like nothing bad ever happened. Then I wake up and remember they don't even want to know their grandchild." "That's a powerful dream," Lucinda said. "It speaks to your natural desire for reconciliation and family wholeness." "Is that even possible?" Emma asked, years of hurt evident in her voice. "After what they did? My father called me," she broke off, unable to repeat the cruel words. "Reconciliation doesn't always mean returning to how things were before," Lucinda said carefully. "Sometimes it means creating a new relationship on different terms. Sometimes it means forgiving without forgetting, for your own peace. And sometimes it means accepting that some relationships cannot be healed, and finding family connections elsewhere." Over the next hour, Emma found herself sharing details of her family dynamics that she had never spoken aloud. Her father's rigid expectations and conditional approval, her mother's passive enabling of his harshness, the pressure to be perfect that had pervaded their household. "I wasn't allowed to make mistakes," she said, tears finally breaking through. "Ever. So when I made the biggest one possible in their eyes, there was no forgiveness available. Just exile." Lucinda handed her a tissue. "Getting pregnant as a teenager was unplanned, certainly. But I'd like to challenge the framing of your child as a mistake. Unexpected life circumstances can become our greatest teachers and blessings, even when they arrive in challenging packages." The reframing struck Emma with unexpected force. She had been thinking of her pregnancy as her mistake, her problem, even as she'd committed to keeping her baby. But what if she viewed it differently? Not as a life-derailing catastrophe, but as a difficult yet potentially transformative journey? The Apache believed that our greatest challenges often contain our greatest gifts, Lucinda continued. The question becomes not, "Why did this happen to me?" but "What can I learn from this, and how can I grow?" Emma left the session emotionally drained, but with a fragile new perspective beginning to form. As she walked across the compound toward her cabin, she noticed a group of young children playing an intricate game involving stones and marked spaces in the dirt. They moved with the unself-conscious joy of the truly present, their laughter carrying on the crisp winter air. Would her child find such simple happiness here? Would this community, which had welcomed a stranger so readily, embrace her baby with the same acceptance? "They're playing tsin," said a voice beside her. Emma turned to find Kim, her quietest roommate, watching the children with a faint smile. "It's a traditional Apache game of strategy. I'm learning it too." Emma nodded, surprised by the voluntary conversation from the usually reserved girl. "It looks complicated." "It is," Kim agreed, "but the kids pick it up quickly. Children adapt better than adults, I think. They haven't learned to be rigid yet." There was something wistful in her tone that prompted Emma to ask, "How long have you been here, Kim?" "Almost a year," Kim replied. "Longest I've stayed anywhere since I ran away from my last foster home when I was 14. She hesitated, then added, "The chief found me living under a bridge in Flagstaff. I was using pretty heavily then. Didn't think I'd last a week here, but—" She shrugged. Something stuck. The casual revelation of such a difficult past reminded Emma that everyone at the compound carried their own burdens, their own battles. Kim's punk aesthetic and standoffish manner masked a journey every bit as challenging as her own. "Do you miss your family?" Emma asked softly. Kim's laugh held no humor. "Which one? The biological mother who let her boyfriend abuse me? Or the series of foster families who treated me like a paycheck?" She shook her head. "Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who actually shows up for you." Before Emma could respond, Sarah approached from the direction of the main house. "There you are," she said to Emma. "Rachel's looking for you. Something about your diet plan." As Emma turned to go, Kim touched her arm lightly, the first voluntary physical contact she'd initiated. "Hey, for what it's worth, I think you're brave. Keeping your baby, standing up to your parents, takes guts." The unexpected support from the typically reserved girl warmed Emma as she made her way to the clinic, where Rachel was waiting with a detailed nutrition plan designed to address her iron deficiency and support her pregnancy. "You'll eat your regular meals in the dining hall," Rachel explained, "but I want you to add these specific foods and supplements." She handed Emma a printed sheet. Martha has already adjusted the kitchen inventory to accommodate these needs. The level of coordination and care continued to astonish Emma. In the week since her arrival, an entire support system had mobilized around her: education plans, medical care, counseling, practical preparation for motherhood, all provided without judgment or hesitation. "I don't know how to thank everyone," Emma said, feeling overwhelmed by the generosity surrounding her. Rachel's practical nature didn't allow for sentimentality. "You thank us by taking care of yourself and your baby," she said simply. "And eventually, by contributing to the community in ways that use your unique strengths. That's how this works. Everyone gives what they can, everyone receives what they need." That evening after dinner, Emma found Chief Benally sitting alone on the main house porch, wrapped in a traditional blanket against the evening chill, gazing at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. "May I join you?" she asked hesitantly. He gestured to the empty chair beside him. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching as the vast canopy of stars revealed itself with a clarity impossible in the light-polluted skies of Phoenix. "When I was a child," the chief finally said, "my grandfather taught me to navigate by the stars. Always know where you are, he told me, and you will never truly be lost." Emma considered this wisdom. "I think I've been lost for a long time," she admitted. "Even before—" She placed her hand on her growing belly. "Many young people are," Chief Benally replied. "The modern world offers countless paths but little guidance on which to choose. Traditional cultures provided clearer direction. Not always perfect, but at least defined." "Like the star paths your grandfather taught you?" The chief nodded approvingly at her understanding. "Precisely. Now young people must create their own star maps, often without elders to guide them. It is a heavy burden." Emma thought about her parents, who had provided rigid expectations rather than genuine guidance, and whose own moral compass had failed when faced with the reality of their daughter's pregnancy. "I've been wondering," she said carefully, "if I should try to contact my parents. Let them know where I am, at least." Chief Benally considered this thoughtfully. "What does your heart tell you?" "That I'm still angry," Emma admitted, "but also that someday I want my child to know their grandparents if possible. And that maybe, given time, they might." She couldn't quite bring herself to voice the hope that lingered despite everything. "The Apache believe that familial bonds remain even when severed by conflict or distance," the chief said. "But we also understand that reconciliation requires willingness from both sides. You cannot force another's heart to open." "So what should I do?" "Perhaps write to them," he suggested. "Not to beg forgiveness. You have done nothing requiring forgiveness but to inform them of your well-being and location. The rest is their choice. You extend the possibility of connection. They must decide whether to grasp it." The balanced wisdom resonated with Emma. No groveling, no accusations, simply a bridge extended that her parents could cross or not, according to their own hearts. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything, for taking me in when no one else would." Chief Benally's weathered face creased in a slight smile. "You know, Emma, in the old days, The Apache would sometimes adopt children from other tribes, even enemies, if they showed courage or special qualities. These children became fully Apache not through blood, but through spirit and commitment. He studied her with those perceptive eyes. You may not have Apache blood, but I see in you a spirit our ancestors would have recognized and valued. The validation touched something deep in Emma's wounded heart, a place that had always questioned her worth, even before her pregnancy had made her an outcast in her family's eyes. To be seen, truly seen, for qualities beyond her mistakes or appearance or background, this was a gift beyond measure. As the stars continued their ancient dance across the sky, Emma felt a flutter within her abdomen, so faint she might have imagined it, except that it came again, stronger. Her baby's first movements, like butterfly wings against her insides. Emma's heart lurched painfully as she carefully handed Lily back to Diane and stood to face the officer. Had something happened to her parents? Had they reported her as a runaway? At nearly 17, she existed in a legal gray area. Not quite an adult, but not a small child either. Ms. Mitchell, Deputy Garcia said, his tone professional but not unkind. Your parents filed a missing persons report 2 days ago. They claim you left home without explanation, and they've been searching for you since December. The blatant lie stole Emma's breath. They had kicked her out, given her 3 days to leave. Their revision of history to cast themselves as concerned parents rather than the ones who had abandoned her ignited a flash of anger that momentarily overwhelmed her anxiety. That's not true, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. They told me to leave because of my pregnancy. They said I brought shame on the family and couldn't stay. Deputy Garcia's expression suggested this wasn't entirely unexpected information. I suspected there might be more to the story. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement explaining the circumstances of your departure? Emma glanced at Chief Benali, who gave her a slight nod of encouragement. Yes, she said. I can tell you exactly what happened. Over the next hour, Emma provided a detailed account of her parents' reaction to her pregnancy, their ultimatum, and her journey to the reservation. She showed the deputy her school enrollment documents, her prenatal care records, and the letter she had written that very morning. I wasn't hiding, she concluded. I was trying to create stability for myself and my baby after they left me with no options. Deputy Garcia finished taking notes and regarded Emma thoughtfully. At 16, legally you're still a minor under your parents' guardianship. However, Arizona law recognizes certain exceptions for minors in your situation. He glanced at Chief Benali. The reservation status complicates matters further. Emma is here under the Tribal Youth Program, the chief stated firmly, which operates with federal approval to provide safe harbor for at-risk youth. Regardless of tribal affiliation, her educational and medical needs are being met, and she has expressed her clear wish to remain. The deputy nodded. I'll need to report back that I've found her and verified her safety. However, I can include her statement regarding the circumstances and her current situation. He turned back to Emma. Your parents may still attempt to compel your return through legal channels. Are you prepared for that possibility? Emma placed a protective hand over her growing belly, determination replacing her initial fear. I'm prepared to fight for what's best for my baby. This community has given us what my parents wouldn't, acceptance and support. I'm not going back to people who see my child as a source of shame. There was a hint of approval in the deputy's expression as he closed his notebook. I'll convey your position. Chief Benali, the department may need additional documentation from your program to support Emma's status here. We will provide whatever is necessary, the chief assured him. After the deputy departed, Emma found herself trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline. The chief guided her to a quiet corner of the community center, away from curious onlookers. You spoke with courage, he told her. But this may be only the beginning of a longer battle. Why would they report me missing now? Emma asked, confusion mixing with hurt. They're the ones who told me to leave. They made it clear they didn't want me or my baby in their lives. The chief considered this question with his usual thoughtfulness. People often rewrite history to protect their self-image. Perhaps in the telling and retelling of your departure, they convinced themselves they were the concerned parents, not the ones who closed their door. Or perhaps they simply realized how their actions would appear to others and sought to create a narrative that cast them in a better light. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The possibility of legal proceedings cast a shadow over the following weeks, but Emma refused to let it derail the progress she was making. With her 5th month of pregnancy well underway, she had settled into a routine that balanced her education, community responsibilities, and preparation for motherhood. On a bright February morning, her 17th birthday, Emma arrived at the dining hall to find a small celebration prepared in her honor. A homemade cake, decorated with fresh berries, sat at her usual table, surrounded by thoughtfully chosen gifts from her new community, handcrafted baby items from the elders, books from the education staff, and a beautiful journal from her cabin mates. The Apache believed that each birthday represents not just the passage of time, but the deepening of wisdom, Chief Benali said, presenting her with a small package wrapped in soft leather. This year has certainly brought you more wisdom than many experience in decades. Inside the package, Emma found an intricately beaded baby carrier, designed in the traditional Apache style, its patterns telling a story of protection and courage that Martha had patiently explained to her during beading circles. "This is too precious," Emma protested, running her fingers reverently over the meticulous beadwork. "It is precisely precious enough," the chief countered with gentle firmness. "Your child will be carried close to your heart, surrounded by the protective intentions of many hands that worked to create this gift." Emma blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the generosity of people who had known her for such a short time, yet had embraced her so completely. The contrast with her parents, rejection, remained painful, but it was increasingly balanced by the genuine connection she felt with this unexpected community. Later that day, as Emma worked in the greenhouse alongside several other young mothers, Rachel appeared at the door with an expression that immediately set Emma on alert. "You showed great strength," Chief Benali observed when they were alone. "It is never easy to stand firm against those who once held authority over us." "I kept thinking about what you said about warriors choosing their battles," Emma replied. This was one worth fighting, even though it hurt. In the days that followed, Emma found herself processing the encounter with her parents through long walks in the pine forest surrounding the compound, often accompanied by Sarah or Diane, who seemed to intuitively understand her need for both solitude and support. "I thought I'd feel worse," she admitted to Diane as they sat on a fallen log, watching Lily toddle unsteadily among the pine needles. "Like, devastated or broken, but mostly I feel—" "Free?" Diane suggested. "Yes," Emma realized with surprise. "Free from waiting for their approval, free from trying to fit myself into their expectations. I wish things could be different with them, but I'm not responsible for fixing what they broke." February melted into March, bringing the first tentative signs of spring to the reservation. As Emma entered her 6th month of pregnancy, her body continued its dramatic transformation. Her baby's movements had grown from subtle flutters to definite kicks and rolls that sometimes kept her awake at night, but also provided constant reassurance of the growing life within. The ultrasound at the reservation hospital had confirmed she was having a girl, a revelation that had brought unexpected tears. A daughter. Someone who would look to her for the guidance and acceptance that her own mother had failed to provide. The responsibility was enormous, but Emma found herself increasingly confident in her ability to meet it. Not alone, but surrounded by the community that had become her chosen family. One unusually warm afternoon, Emma sat with Elder Martha on the main house porch, working on a baby blanket while the older woman shared stories of Apache women through history. "Our grandmothers were not fragile creatures," Martha said, her gnarled fingers moving deftly through complex stitches. "They gave birth in difficult conditions, raised children while following seasonal movements, faced hardships that would break many modern people. But they were not broken because they were never alone. The tribe moved together, worked together, raised children together." Emma considered this as she carefully followed Martha's pattern. That's what's been lost in modern life, isn't it? The sense that we're all connected, all responsible for each other. Martha nodded approvingly. "You understand. Many young people never grasp this truth, even those born to the tribe. When you live only for yourself, every hardship feels insurmountable. When you live as part of something larger, you find strength beyond your own resources." The wisdom resonated with Emma's experience over the past months. Alone, her pregnancy had seemed an overwhelming crisis. Here, supported by a community that valued both her and her child, it had transformed into a challenging but navigable journey. "I want to give back," Emma said suddenly. "Not just while I'm here, but in the future. This place, these people, you've all given me so much. I need to find a way to pay that forward." Martha smiled, the deep lines around her eyes crinkling with genuine pleasure. "The chief has said from the beginning that you have an old soul. Many who come here think only of what they can receive. Few so quickly understand the importance of giving in return." As they continued working, Chief Benali emerged from the main house, accompanied by David, the education coordinator. Both men wore expressions that immediately piqued Emma's curiosity. "We've been reviewing your academic progress," David said without preamble. "You've maintained straight A's despite the disruption to your education and the challenges of your pregnancy." Emma blushed slightly at the praise. "I've had a lot of support, and studying gives me something positive to focus on." "More than that," the chief said. "You've shown exceptional ability, particularly in science and mathematics. David believes you could complete your high school requirements early, possibly in time to apply for college next year." The possibility had never occurred to Emma. College had always been a distant expectation in her family, but the pregnancy had seemed to close that door firmly. The idea that it might still be within reach sent a thrill of excitement through her. "I hadn't thought that far ahead," she admitted. "I've been so focused on the baby, on just getting through each day." "The time is coming to think beyond each day," Chief Benali said. "Your daughter will need a mother with dreams of her own who can show her how to overcome obstacles rather than be defined by them." David handed her a folder containing information about tribal scholarship programs, college application timelines, and options for young mothers pursuing higher education. "You have options," he said simply. "More than you might have realized." That night, long after her roommates had fallen asleep, Emma sat by the cabin window, leafing through the materials David had provided. The moon cast silver light across the pages as she allowed herself, for the first time, to envision a future beyond her pregnancy and immediate survival. Perhaps she could study nursing, inspired by Rachel's practical, life-affirming work. Or education, helping other young people navigate their own difficult paths. Or even law, advocating for vulnerable youth like herself who needed someone to stand up for their rights when family systems failed them. The baby kicked vigorously, as if responding to her mother's excitement. Emma placed her hand over the spot, feeling the strong movements that reflected her daughter's growing strength. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn child. "Better than okay. We're going to build something beautiful together." Outside the window, the vast Arizona sky stretched endlessly above the pine forest, stars tracing ancient patterns that had guided travelers for millennia. Emma thought about the Apache tradition Chief Benali had described, of singing to babies before birth, introducing them to the natural world that would be their first teacher. Softly, so as not to wake her roommates, she began to sing a lullaby her own grandmother had once sung to her, the melody carrying promises of protection and endless love. As her voice filled the quiet cabin, Emma felt her daughter respond with gentle movements, their first conversation in a relationship that would shape both their lives. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be sleepless nights, financial challenges, difficult decisions about education and career paths, but looking back at how far she had already come, from rejected daughter to expectant mother, from homeless teenager to valued community member, Emma found herself facing the future not with fear, but with growing confidence and hope. In this unexpected place, among people who had no obligation to care for her yet, had chosen to embrace both her and her unborn child, Emma had discovered what her parents had never truly given her: unconditional acceptance and the freedom to define her own path forward. And perhaps that was the greatest gift she could pass on to her daughter, not perfect circumstances or material advantages, but the unshakable knowledge that she was loved exactly as she was, and the courage to forge her own way in the world, regardless of whatever obstacles might appear. Emma stood at the window of the birthing center, watching the sunrise paint the White Mountain Apache Reservation in shades of gold and amber. April had arrived with a burst of wildflowers and birdsong, nature's celebration of renewal that seemed perfectly timed to match her own imminent transformation from expectant to actual motherhood. At 38 weeks pregnant, Emma's body had reached the fullness of creation, her belly a perfect dome beneath the loose cotton dress she wore, her movements slower but purposeful, her mind oscillating between anticipation and apprehension. According to Rachel, the baby could come any day now. The crib stood ready in the small family cabin she had moved into last week, lovingly prepared with handmade blankets and the gifts from her community baby shower. "Can't sleep?" Rachel appeared beside her, 2 steaming mugs of herbal tea in hand. Emma accepted the tea gratefully. She was doing somersaults all night, practicing her gymnastics before she runs out of room. Rachel smiled. An active baby usually means a strong-willed child. "You'll have your hands full." "I'm counting on it," Emma replied, her hand automatically finding the spot where her daughter was currently pushing against her ribs. "I want her to be strong. She'll need to be." The past 2 months had brought both challenges and unexpected joys. After her parents' failed attempt to bring her home, Emma had received formal notice that they were withdrawing all financial support and connection, a legal severance delivered through certified mail that had hurt despite its predictability. But the pain had been balanced by the deepening bonds she'd formed within the reservation community and her growing confidence in her ability to create a life for herself and her child. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "How are the college applications coming?" Rachel asked, settling into a chair beside the window. Emma sighed. "Slowly. It's hard to focus on essay questions when I'm this close to giving birth. But I've submitted 3 so far, all with strong scholarship applications. David thinks I have a good chance at the tribal scholarship program too, especially with my grades." The education coordinator had become one of Emma's strongest advocates, helping her navigate the complex process of applying to colleges as a teen mother with limited financial resources. His belief in her potential had been unwavering even when her own confidence faltered. "The University of Arizona has an excellent nursing program," Rachel observed, "and their family housing options are among the best in the state." Emma nodded. "That's my first choice. Second is Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. Close enough to visit the reservation regularly, but still a strong program. I just hope," she trailed off, the familiar worry resurfacing, "that you can manage motherhood and college simultaneously?" Rachel finished for her. "Many have done it before you, none with your determination and support system." The midwife's confidence warmed Emma as they watched the reservation come alive with morning activities. In the distance, she could see Diane walking with Lily toward the community garden, the toddler's unsteady gait requiring patient supervision. The sight brought a smile to Emma's face. Soon that would be her, guiding her own daughter's first steps into the world. "I should check on my other patients," Rachel said, rising. "Try to rest today. First babies often take their time, but when labor begins, you'll want all your strength." After Rachel departed, Emma remained at the window, contemplating the journey that had brought her to this moment. 7 months ago, she had arrived at the reservation broken and desperate, cast out by the family that should have protected her, carrying a child she had no idea how to provide for. Today, she stood on the threshold of motherhood with a community behind her, educational prospects ahead of her, and a strength within her that had been forged through adversity. The first contraction came as Emma was helping in the community kitchen, a sudden tightening that made her pause mid-sentence while explaining a recipe to one of the younger girls. Martha, ever observant, noticed immediately. "The baby comes?" she asked, her weathered hands stilling on the dough she was kneading. "I'm not sure," Emma replied, placing a hand on her lower back as the sensation eased. "It could be practice contractions. I've been having those for weeks." Martha studied her with knowing eyes. "There is a different energy about you today. I think your daughter has chosen her birthday." Word spread quickly through the close-knit community. Within an hour, Rachel had examined Emma and confirmed that early labor had begun, though the birth might still be many hours away. Following the midwife's advice, Emma walked the reservation paths with Sarah and Gabriella for support, pausing to breathe through contractions that gradually increased in intensity and frequency. "Were you scared?" Emma asked Diane, who had joined their walking group, Lily strapped to her back in a traditional cradleboard. "Terrified," Diane admitted, "but also ready. In a way I can't really explain, like my body knew what to do even if my mind was panicking." The honest answer comforted Emma more than false reassurances would have. As the afternoon progressed, her contractions strengthened, requiring deeper focus and support from her friends. Rachel checked her progress regularly, maintaining a calm presence that anchored Emma through the intensifying sensations. "You're doing beautifully," the midwife assured her during one examination. "Your body is opening to bring your daughter into the world." Each contraction brings her closer to your arms. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. By evening, Emma had moved to the birthing room in the clinic, a space designed to balance medical safety with the comfort and spiritual significance of traditional Apache birthing practices. The walls displayed symbols of protection and strength, and the windows were positioned to allow natural light and connection to the outside world that the Apache considered essential for a good birth. Emma looked up in surprise. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means that regardless of your age or legal status, you and Maya have the right to remain here as long as you wish. The council recognized your commitment to our community and your embrace of our ways." His eyes crinkled slightly. "It is not adoption. You do not become Apache through paperwork. But it is acceptance, a formal acknowledgement that you have earned a place here." The news brought fresh tears to Emma's eyes, tears of gratitude and relief. The fear of being forced to leave once she turned 18 had lingered at the edges of her consciousness, despite all reassurances. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to find words adequate to express what this acceptance meant to her and Maya. "Do not thank me," the chief replied. "You earned this through your own actions." The council merely recognized what was already true. Over the next few days, Emma and Maya remained at the clinic under Rachel's watchful care. Visitors came in a steady stream, community members bringing gifts, well wishes, and practical assistance. Diane brought Lily to meet the newborn, the toddler's fascination with the tiny baby providing comic relief during moments of postpartum discomfort and emotional overwhelm. On the fourth day, Emma and Maya moved into their small family cabin, a cozy one-room structure that had been prepared with everything a new mother and infant might need. The transition from constant support to primary responsibility was both liberating and terrifying. That first night alone with her daughter, Emma experienced moments of panic. Was Maya breathing properly? Was she too warm, too cold? Was that cry indicating hunger or discomfort or something more serious? A knock at her door revealed Sarah standing in the moonlight, a thermos of tea in hand. "Rachel thought you might need company," she said with a knowing smile. First nights are the hardest. The simple act of friendship, showing up without being asked, recognizing a need before it was articulated, epitomized the community that had become Emma's family. Through that first night and into the challenging weeks that followed, someone always seemed to appear when Emma's resources were running low. Martha with a pot of nourishing stew, Gabriella offering to watch Maya so Emma could shower, Kim surprisingly adept at calming the baby during fussy periods. May arrived with warmer temperatures and the end of the school year. Despite the demands of new motherhood, Emma had managed to complete her coursework with support from David and her teachers, who had arranged modified assignments and flexible deadlines during her recovery. The achievement felt monumental. She would graduate high school on time with honors, despite a pregnancy, birth, and newborn care that might have derailed her education permanently under different circumstances. As Emma prepared for the reservation school's small graduation ceremony, she received an unexpected letter, this one from the University of Arizona's admissions office. With trembling hands, she opened it while Maya slept in her cradleboard nearby. "Dear Ms. Mitchell," it began, "we are pleased to offer you admission to the University of Arizona College of Nursing for the spring semester." Emma had to read the letter 3 times before the reality sank in. Not only had she been accepted, but she had been awarded a substantial scholarship based on her academic performance and personal circumstances. The letter specifically mentioned her extraordinary perseverance and commitment to education despite significant life challenges, wording that suggested David had been particularly persuasive in his recommendation letter. The acceptance represented more than just an educational opportunity. It was validation that her dream of becoming a nurse was attainable, that motherhood hadn't closed doors but had perhaps opened her to a path of greater purpose. That evening, as the community gathered for dinner, Chief Benally called for attention and asked Emma to stand. "Today we celebrate another milestone in Emma's journey," he announced, his deep voice carrying across the dining hall. "She has been accepted to the University of Arizona's nursing program, with a scholarship that recognizes her exceptional character and abilities. Quote, "The applause that followed was genuine and enthusiastic, carrying none of the condescension or surprise that might have accompanied such an announcement in her former life. Here, her academic achievement was celebrated as a natural extension of who she was, not an unexpected exception to the, quote, tragic teen mother narrative that society often imposed." Later, as Emma walked back to her cabin with Maya sleeping against her chest in a traditional carrier, she found Chief Bentley waiting on her small porch. "I wanted to speak with you privately," he said as she approached, "about your future plans." Emma invited him inside, gently transferring the sleeping Maya to her crib before joining him at her small table. "The university is a 3-hour drive from here," the chief began. "Too far for daily commuting, especially with a child." Emma nodded. "They have family housing on campus. The scholarship covers partial housing costs, and there's a child care center for students with children. I've been researching the logistics." "All good planning," he acknowledged. "But I have another suggestion to consider. What if Maya remained here with us while you attend your classes? You could return on weekends and holidays, maintaining your connection to both worlds." The proposal caught Emma completely by surprise. "You mean, leave Maya here? Without me?" "Not without you," the chief clarified. "With her extended family while her mother pursues the education that will secure both their futures. The arrangement would be temporary, perhaps for your first year, until you are established in your studies and can manage both roles more confidently." Emma's instinctive reaction was refusal. She had fought so hard to keep her daughter. The thought of separation, even temporary and partial, felt like surrender. Yet as the chief outlined the practical advantages, Maya would have the stability of familiar caregivers and surroundings. Emma could focus fully on her studies during the week. The community would maintain Maya's connection to Apache traditions. She found herself considering the possibility. "This is not abandonment," Chief Bentley said gently, reading her expression. "It is utilizing the village that helps raise the child." In traditional Apache culture, children were often cared for by multiple family members, each contributing to their upbringing in different ways. "I need time to think about it," Emma said finally. "Of course, there are months yet before decisions must be made." He rose to leave, but paused at the door. "Remember that strength as a mother is not measured by doing everything alone, but by making wise choices that serve your child's long-term well-being, even when those choices are difficult." In the weeks that followed, Emma considered the chief's proposal with growing objectivity. She observed how naturally Maya had been integrated into the community, how many loving hands were already involved in her care, how the traditional Apache approach to child-rearing emphasized the collective responsibility for nurturing the next generation. On a warm June evening, as Maya approached 2 months old, Emma sat on a hillside overlooking the reservation, her daughter alert and gurgling in her arms. The setting sun painted the landscape in hues of crimson and gold, the beauty of the moment reflecting the clarity that had gradually emerged in Emma's thinking. "We belong to each other," she told Maya, who grabbed at her mother's hair with increasingly coordinated movements. "But we also belong to something bigger than just the two of us. And sometimes the bravest choice a mother can make is to accept help, to let others share in loving you while I work to build our future." As if understanding the significance of the moment, Maya's tiny face grew serious, her dark eyes fixed on her mother's with an intensity that belied her infancy. "I promise you this," Emma continued, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. "Every step I take away from you is actually a step toward you, toward the life I want us to have, toward becoming the mother you deserve. And no matter what, I will always, always come back to you." The decision, once made, brought a sense of peace. Emma would accept the university's offer and the chief's proposal. She would maintain her small cabin on the reservation, returning every weekend and holiday. She would allow the community that had embraced them both to help raise Maya during her most critical early semesters of nursing school. And when the time was right, when her educational foundation was secure, she would bring Maya to live with her near campus, the two of them moving forward together while maintaining their connection to the reservation that had become their true home. 1 year later, on Maya's first birthday, the entire community gathered to celebrate not only the child's milestone, but also Emma's successful completion of her first year of nursing studies with a perfect GPA. The separation had been challenging, but manageable, with technology allowing daily video calls and Emma's dedicated weekend returns creating a rhythm that worked for both mother and daughter. Maya, now walking with the determined wobble of early toddlerhood, had thrived under the collective care of her reservation family. She babbled in a mixture of English and Apache words, recognized and reached for Emma instantly whenever she returned, and showed a strong-willed personality that fulfilled Rachel's early prediction. The birthday celebration followed Apache traditions, with special foods and blessings appropriate for a child's first-year completion. As the community sang and shared stories, Emma found herself seated beside Chief Benali, watching her daughter being gently guided in a simple traditional dance by Martha and several other elders. "You were right," Emma told him quietly. "About the village raising the child. About finding strength in accepting help. About so many things." The chief smiled, the deep lines around his eyes crinkling with genuine pleasure. "The true measure of wisdom is not in being right, but in recognizing what is right for each unique situation. You made a courageous choice, one that honored both your responsibilities as a mother and your potential as a young woman with much to contribute." "I've been thinking," Emma said, watching Maya laugh as she attempted to mimic the elders' dance movements. "After I finish my nursing degree, I want to come back here. The reservation clinic needs more healthcare providers, especially ones who understand both Western medicine and traditional practices." Chief Benali nodded, unsurprised by her declaration. "I have always believed you were brought to us for a purpose larger than your immediate needs. Perhaps this is part of that purpose, completing a circle that brings healing to both the one who was once wounded and to others through her acquired wisdom." As the celebration continued around them, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been a terrified, rejected teenager with no idea how she would survive, let alone thrive. Today, she was a successful nursing student, a confident mother, and a valued member of a community that had recognized her worth when she couldn't see it herself. The pregnant teen cast out by her family had found not just shelter but belonging among people who saw past her circumstances to her potential. The Apache chief's simple statement, "You belong with our tribe," had offered more than temporary refuge. It had opened the door to a life richer and more purposeful than anything Emma could have imagined in her darkest hour. Maya broke free from the dancing circle and toddled determinedly toward Emma, arms outstretched in unmistakable demand. Emma lifted her daughter into her lap, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair and marveling at how someone so small could contain such an enormous spirit. "Mama," Maya declared with the absolute certainty of a child who has never doubted her place in her mother's heart, despite their part-time physical separation. "That's right, little warrior," Emma whispered, holding her daughter close as the celebration continued around them. "I'm your mama, and you're my brave, beloved girl, and we belong right here, exactly where we are." In that moment of perfect connection, surrounded by the community that had become family, Emma understood that her journey had never been about mere survival or overcoming rejection. It had been about finding the courage to create a new definition of belonging, one based not on blood or obligation or rigid social expectations, but on mutual choice, respect, and love freely given and gratefully received. And in that new understanding of family and community, both she and Maya had found not just a place to stay, but a true home where they could grow, contribute, and thrive, together and individually, for all the years to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.